Welcome to the Saturday in Athens podcast. I'm your host, Seth Saunders, joined as always by my co-host, James Kim. It is the week of Thanksgiving. It is Rivalry Week. It's a week to be grateful, and it is fitting because the guests that we have today, we are very grateful for. We've gotten to meet some awesome people through the course of doing this show, and none finer and none that we're more thankful to know than our good friend and the voice of Sanford Stadium, Brook Whitmire. Brook, always good to see you, brother. Welcome to the show.
Seth, James, great to see y'all as well. Thanks for having me. Always a blast, and the feeling is mutual, I promise you.
So let me ask you this, because I know that there is nobody with more passion and with more history with the dogs than you. And I feel like we ask it this every time we talk to you, but I'm going to keep asking it. Do you keep waking up and going, when will this dream end?
Yes. The short answer is yes. The longer answer is I don't even know, Seth and James, if I can't get my mind around it. And every now and again, and I really have not spent, this may sound crazy, but I've not spent that much time really thinking about it. But I found myself doing that driving out of off of Rocky Top the other night. And I'm thinking, this is just, it's really unbelievable. It is truly we throw that word around a lot, but it's hard to get your mind around it. It's unbelievable what's going on right now.
So you were in Knoxville on Saturday afternoon,
Yes,
and got to experience that. And I think this is part of it, right? Is that historically, and I think we all have scar tissue like this, going to an environment like that at the point in the season where we went and with everything riding on it and everything on the line, I think we're all conditioned to have some consternation and some worry about that. And it seems like repeatedly over the last 3 years for sure, but I think certainly over the last 18 months, it's become more of a mindset shift. And that is now the expectation is this freight train ain't stopping, baby. Right. And I thought it was cool that, look, the Georgia creative team does an outstanding job each week, but boy, did they outdo themselves with the recap video this week. And I thought there were some cool videos and cool views. And I thought one of the coolest parts of that recap, and y'all tell me what you think on this, was after the first touchdown, where they had the big 75-yard run, there's this close-up of Ra Thomas on the sideline. And he's like, yeah, whatever, man. Like, there was just there's no worry. There's no emotional swing by them because they know this is about to be a 60-minute freight train that y'all ain't ready for.
Yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts on that, James. I thought the same thing, Seth. My daughter, Allie, who's about to graduate from UGA, imagine being in here for these years. But she texted me last night and said, Dad, you got to go see that video that you referenced. And unbelievable. And it was that feeling even in the stadium. I mean, that was as loud for that few seconds. That's as loud as the stadium's going to get. But man, that literally was it. And it's of all the things we can look at and break down, look at how we're doing on third down and the stops that we get and then the points that we're scoring. And make no mistake, gentlemen, I'm already on a tangent here. We could be scoring 55, 60 points a game if we wanted to. We don't need to, and our style is not to do that. But there's no panic. In fact, it's almost kind of a joke to expect it now that these opening drives, and of course that one was pretty quick, 11 seconds. But there's no panic, and we are who we are, and you better be good and strapped on to play the dogs right now.
Jimmy, I know we've talked about this and texted about this, and in our old married couple relationship, I am the eternal optimist, and you are the person that gives me my dose of pessimism to keep me in check. But I think even this team and these teams have shifted that mindset too, where you're kind of on my side of the fence now, where I don't get any kind of worry or anxiety from my boy anymore. He's ready to rip. I mean, am I reading that right?
Yeah, since Auburn, it's really been I don't get that anxiety or pit in my stomach or anything like that. But it's mainly because this team, it's not like they're making the other team's not doing something huge to throw the dogs off. The dogs are just making mistakes. They're beating themselves on these plays. They, Smile made the overcorrection, left this huge gap. Tyke, over pursued, and, Wright, I think his name is, just made a good play. It was the dogs' mistakes for reason that 75-yard run happened, not something spectacular Tennessee did. And once the dogs correct those mistakes, it's game over for everybody. And they've proven that time and time again. They correct so quickly throughout the game, and they make those mental mistakes are just once they're done, and then they're just going to roll over everybody. So I haven't seen a team with this mental fortitude in my life, really, throughout my fandom in the NFL and college. It's very impressive what Kirby has done with this particular group of players, that they just don't get rattled at all.
Did you guys?
Brooke, James and I talked about this a lot, and I'm interested to get your take on this, but it seems to me, and it's been a super fun, I think, college football season. I think the landscape has been different this year. Obviously, it's a lot of fun in the Pac-12 with Oregon and Washington doing what they're doing. Alabama's made their usual late charge and found themselves. Obviously, a big battle on Saturday in the Big Ten for supremacy there. Even the Big 12, I think, has had some fun things that have happened. So a lot of parity this year, and I think a lot of it, seemingly the narrative has been less about who the one dominant team is, and it's wide open. But here's my thing, and James and I think are in lockstep on this, is with my own two eyes, I've only seen one team that can beat Georgia, and that's Georgia. And if they do what they're supposed to do and take care of their business, not just from a talent perspective, but from how they go about their business from Sunday to Saturday, I haven't seen a roster in all of college football that's going to beat them when they are functioning at the level they should function at. I mean, is that what you have seen too? I mean, you have front row seat to it.
Yeah, Seth, it is. And James, it's one of those things you have to kind of pinch yourself to believe, but I agree with that assessment in totality. And I will tell you that you find yourself thinking, I mean, think of the injuries we've had. Think of the attrition. Think of the fact that we changed offensive coordinators, which, by the way, anybody who doesn't believe, and I could go back and talk about his first stint, Mike Bobo is an unbelievable offensive coordinator, developer of talent, play caller extraordinaire. And it baffles me as to why, and maybe there aren't anymore, I hope not, why people don't understand that. But you think about the coaching changes, you think about the injuries that just keep coming. And it says something about depth. It says something about recruiting, but it also says something, as Coach Smart has pointed out, it absolutely says something about culture, because it's one thing, and I don't care if you're talking about a business or a team or any entity, succession planning is one thing. Succession readiness is a whole nother thing. And we got guys that are stepping in there and doing what they need to do on a moment's notice. And I don't know if you guys caught this, but Kirby said something a few weeks ago, and I just caught a piece of it. And I'm not quoting him directly, but he said something to the effect of talking about adjustments and whatnot, that our guys have got a good encyclopedia of adjustment terminology. And it just seems like, and that's, again, one of those overused football words, sometimes misused. But, man, do we adjust? Do we correct? Do we figure it out on the fly? And then the next thing you know, particularly with these new clock rules, you look up and it's 4 or 5 possessions later and we've scored 20, 30 unanswered points. And that crowd, by the way, got out of it just as quickly as they got in it the other day. That's for sure.
Yeah, we had talked a little bit in the preview episode about Neyland and what that atmosphere is and can be. And I do think this, Brooke, is cyclical across college football. I think home environments in a lot of ways, and maybe there are some that are an outlier to that, like maybe Tiger Stadium is different. Maybe there are some others. But for the most part, I think the better your team is playing, then culturally, the better the fan base is inside the stadium. I think we've seen, and you and I have talked about this, but there's been an uptick at Sanford Stadium. I think if we're all real with ourselves, the environment there has been much better in the last 4 to 5 years. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? I mean, there's just a different level of engagement when you're playing well, but also there's a different level of expectation when you've had the success that Georgia has had. And Tennessee is the opposite side of that coin. They really haven't had a lot to be optimistic about, right? I mean, last year was more of a blip than it was a consistency in what their program has looked like now for really 2 decades, if we're having an honest conversation. Yeah. And so even though they seat a lot of people, that is not necessarily an environment that you go, oh boy, I'm nervous to go play there. And I mean, James will readily tell you he is much more nervous and has much more apprehension about going to the Voodoo Ground at Jordan Hare than he is going to Knoxville.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Coach Bobo, because in this season of thankfulness and gratitude, there are, I think, a lot of folks, if they're looking themselves in the mirror, owe Coach Bobo a I'm sorry card this holiday season, because a lot of folks had a lot of things to say and a lot of opinions, and boy, has it worked out swimmingly. And one piece of it that I think has been undersold, which he's always done a magnificent job at, is quarterback development. And let's talk about Carson Beck for a minute, because obviously a huge transition going from two-time national champion Stetson Bennett to then Carson Beck, who waited his turn, but for all of us was an unknown commodity in a lot of ways. We didn't know what he was going to be. I think nationally people didn't know what he was going to be. And every test this kid has been given this semester, he is passing with flying colors. I mean, he is on the dean's list of college football quarterbacks when it comes to performance. And how cool has that been for you to watch in person? And also, has it outpaced what your expectations may have been?
Seth, yeah, he is. Carson Beck is playing at a level that, and there's all kinds of superlatives we could put out there, but I don't know that I've seen a Georgia quarterback play with the level of consistency and predictability that he has played with this year. And I echo what you said. I mean, he's an unknown commodity, even though he's been here for so long. The only observation that I was able to make in person, literally back when Stetson was doing his thing, and boy, did he do his thing. Carson seemed to me to improve from one G day to the next. I went a year, didn't see him in practice or anything, and I just thought, well, he looks like he's improving. But and you look at him, guys. Look at that. You look at that young man at any given point in the game. He's just the same. I mean, his eyes are the same. His facial expressions are the same. He's just. It's like he's in this permanent zone. And I ran into Jim Donnan a few weeks ago on a Friday morning. I think it was before the Missouri game. And it's always, I mean, that guy's a treasure and an offensive genius in his own right. And one of the things he brought up that day, he's like, he's due to have a bad game. Every quarterback does. He's just due. Yeah. That's the one thing that kind of sticks in my mind, that, sooner or later he's going to have a bad game. And surely he will, but he hasn't yet. And it's just incredible, the lack of, I shouldn't say the lack of attention, but how's the guy not on everybody's top three for the Heisman? I mean, that's a whole nother topic, maybe for another show, but that thing's been compromised in so many ways. But however way you want to measure the Heisman, he should be on the short list. He's just done an unbelievable job.
Yeah, I could not agree with that more. And James and I have talked about it on other shows. I mean, I think if you're talking about value and the value someone has to their team, I don't think you can understate what his value has been to Georgia. And I know people want to say, well, the cupboard was so full and you've got all these weapons and anybody could do it. But it's not true, right? And I also think that tells on people a little bit, because it shows me that you haven't watched him from game one.
That's right.
To last weekend in Knoxville, because those are two divergently different players.
Right.
And the command that he has now, the thing that struck me, man, and James is probably tired of hearing me say it, but it's the checks that he's made. Like the things that he's done as the thinker in the offense week to week have been outstanding, man. And I agree with you. I think if you are the general of the best team in all the land, and you are commanding that offense with all that pressure and doing it at the level that he's done. And this is the other part. Completed 80% of his passes last week. And for the season, he's 70 plus. Like, he's playing out of his mind.
Yes, and lest we forget, he's had his share of drops. He's had a couple of games where he's gone for, over 300 yards or close to it, and you can think of a deep ball or two that's been dropped. And I agree with you, Seth. I think his checks, his command of the offense, and to the naked eye, we can't see this. You could go back and study it, Those guys that are coaching us have forgotten more football than I know, but it's obvious that he's keeping us out of bad plays, getting us into some good plays. He doesn't beat himself. You know, I thought a key moment, looking back on it, that Tennessee game after the 7-0, it's the first drive. We're moving down the field. By the way, made a great fumble recovery. That was massive. Then we're third and super long, and we all want touchdowns. I'm not a big field goal fan. But look, it's third and probably 18. You're on the road. You got to get some points there. And he was patient. I thought he was on his way to running for maybe even a first down when they gave Tennessee apparently called the timeout. Then he made a good decision, got some yards, put us in a situation where Mr. Dependable could come through, made it 7-3, and it's a different feel. I want to go back to one thing real quickly, gentlemen, on Coach Bobo. One of the things about this Georgia team that I like, and that there's 10,000 things, but one of the things I'm enthused about that we all can see, we're peaking at the right time. We're playing our best football at the right time. And it reminds me of 2007, going way back, when I don't think anybody would have beaten us those last few games. Unfortunately, with the system the way it was, we got Hawaii in the Sugar Bowl instead of getting to play where we should have played. Then go back to 2014, not the end of the season, but during that season, I'll go to my grave saying, and isn't it ironic with NIL and everything the way it is now, if Todd Gurley doesn't get suspended, I don't know that that's not one of the greatest seasons in Georgia football history. And by the way, statistically speaking, people can go back and look at it. That was the greatest year of offense we've ever had, including the last 2 or 3 years, and that was under Coach Bobo. Now he's right back to scoring 40 a game, getting 5 bazillions of yards, balance, the flow, y'all, the play calling, that drive that ended up in the halfback pass. Man, it's just a thing of beauty. It's just, of course, he's got some toys to play with, which is that goes back to recruiting and everything else.
Yeah, I've been struck with how, I guess easy is probably the wrong word. I know they've worked a bunch, and I know it hasn't been easy, but from a fan's perspective, from a fan's eye, the transition has looked so easy from Coach Monken to Coach Bobo. And I know the guys have talked about there hasn't been a huge shift in scheme and playbook, but it does look a little different. Sure. I think there are things that have been inserted and things that we're more used to with Coach Bobo. Like, I love the I formation toss touchdown, like the different things that we've seen, the different looks that he's maneuvered. I loved when he's lined Kendall up as the fullback, and then you have Dejon behind him. Like, I just love what they're doing. I want to talk about that real quick. And I don't want to belabor everything on offense because I love what the defense has done too. Yeah. But Kendall Milton looks healthy as we've seen him in his time in Athens. And boy, has he looked dangerous. Ooh. And I think it has added a whole nother level of depth to what this offense can be and what this can become. It looks like for the first time in his career, and I think this is a health thing, he's not thinking. He's just reacting and being the athlete that he is. I mean, what do you think on that?
That one run he had, y'all, Saturday, and he had several, but that one run where he went for 12, 14 yards, something like that, and was just breaking tackles and shifting, that's one of the best runs. And that's one of those things about runs, even back in the great days of Herschel. Sometimes your best runs are not necessarily for touchdowns or big game breakers. That was a phenomenal run, and I completely agree, Seth. A healthy Kendall Milton is a big, big, big deal. And it's almost like, or it is like, when we can line up Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey healthy, and we can also line up Dejon Edwards and Kendall Milton healthy, the playbook opens up a little bit. And he is, I'll make one bold hot take prediction here. He's going to break one before this season's over.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to the house with it before the season's over. He's come so close, but gosh, and seems to pick up blitz as well and knows what he's doing there. I mean, we're a different team with a healthy Kendall Milton, no question.
So, rivalry week this week, big one on tap in Atlanta. First of 2 straight weeks in Atlanta for the Dogs. Clean, old-fashioned hate on tap. I know for a big segment of the fan base, and we all have recency bias, this doesn't, I don't think, have the juice and the sexiness that it probably once had. But I will say this. I think Tech is trending in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to think about them and give a lot of perspective to the fact that you shift from Paul Johnson running the triple option to then go to Jeff Collins, who wants to run a more traditional offense. And now you've already made a coaching change to Brent Key. And I just think there's a lot of things there that are, in motion for them. And by all accounts, for them, from where they were coming from, they've had a good year, right? And I think
No
that's
question.
shown in where the kickoff time is this year. We're at the 7:30 for the first time in what feels like a decade plus. And so I guess for me, I know that you have some more perspective on this rivalry and what it means. Where does it sit for you now, and where do you think it could still go? Because there's a loud portion of the fan base that says we shouldn't play them anymore. Yeah. Like it's not a real rivalry, and they shouldn't be on the schedule anymore. I mean, where do you sit on all that?
They'll always be the number one rivalry, and anyone who doesn't understand that, and I say this with all due respect, anybody just doesn't understand the history and how quickly things can change if we don't keep our foot on the gas. I'll never talk about Tech without talking about my dad, who graduated from Georgia in 1950. And for a number of years, back when the rules were really different, was heavily, I've told you guys this before, but he was heavily involved in recruiting for Georgia, traveled with the team. That was not his professional job, but that's what he did. He didn't get married until he was 37 years old. So for a number of years there, his life was recruiting for Georgia, and it was against Tech. And it was when Tech won 8 in a row from 1949 through 1956. The drought. We're in the best of times. That was the worst of times. 1957, we win 7-0 on Grant Field with number 40, Theron Sapp, whose jersey is retired for this. That tells you something. There's 4 of them. Herschel, Charlie Trippi, Frank Sinkwich, and Theron Sapp. Breaks the drought. We then reel off a short streak there, lose 3 in a row again. Then Coach Dooley comes on the scene, and things really begin to go our way. Tech is the enemy. They're always the number one rivalry. And and I understand it. We're playing Florida, we're playing Auburn, we're playing Tennessee, we're playing for championships, and we're schooling Tech in the meantime. And heaven forbid, I don't want it to ever happen, but just lose to them and then go ask Georgia fans who their biggest rival is. Right. And in fact, I got to show you guys something. This is a prized possession. My dad gave this to me. This is a practice jersey of Theron Sapp's.
Oh,
in the 1950s. Incredible. And man, I'm telling you something. Diane and I, my sister, we grew up. There was no doubt in our home who the number one rival is. And, going back to your analysis, Seth, they're absolutely better. I will tell you, Brent Key's done a great job. He's recruited well. He's hired a great staff. They've won some. I mean, they're a good football team. Mm-hmm. And they got a big break when that game was announced at 7:30. It's a completely different deal between 7:30 and noon. And that's, again, I have a world of confidence in our preparation and in our head coach and his staff. To me, guys, and I'm segueing here a little bit, but Georgia's biggest opponent right now, and I agree with you, Seth, it's ourselves, but it's also the law of averages. Yeah. We're just due to lose. We're due for this streak to end, but Lord knows Tech won a game in 1999 in Atlanta, y'all. That was the single worst moment in college football officiating that's ever occurred, in my view. And that's saying something as a Georgia guy, but that's the famous where Jasper Saints didn't fumble. They said he did. There was no replay. Tech recovers it. They run around in the end zone. We tackle them, which if it was a fumble, should have been a safety. And they come out of that with a double overtime win. That's 1999, and they haven't beaten us on Grant Field since. And before that, it was 1989. I was in college then. They're due to beat us, particularly in Atlanta. But it's not going to happen because of who we are and what we're going to do. But Georgia fans would be making a serious error to either underestimate Tech or to not understand that they're the biggest rivalry. It's not necessarily what your record is or who's winning or who's the most competitive. It's Tech. All that said, if y'all will indulge me for just a little bit, I'm going to tell you the most shameful statistic that I could throw at you about Georgia football. And that is the last 5 meetings in Athens I know we're playing in Atlanta, but in Athens, the last 5 meetings against Tech, against Auburn, against Tennessee, Tech has beaten us more in Sanford Stadium than those other 2. You take it back to the year 2000, the same thing is true. In fact, since 2000, Tech has beaten us twice as many times in Athens as Auburn has. That's atrocious. And I would submit to you, gentlemen, and maybe we'll talk about this in a year's time. It's because, in large part, now we've blown some big leads and not played well and not been in a good place mentally. We surely will now. And Coach Smart, I mean, 2016, we lost one to them, 28-27, never should have. We haven't since, as you guys know. But to me, that game's played on Saturday. It's after Thanksgiving. The university shuts down for a week. The students go home. They eat turkey. They hunt. Oh, it's just Tech. We've already played Auburn. Are you going to the Bends for the big game? They don't come back. We're playing at noon, and the atmosphere is not what it needs to be. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, for Tech, it's the freaking Super Bowl, and they come in like everybody does. Tech bases their lives on beating Georgia. They're obsessed with beating Georgia. They have an inferiority complex about Georgia that's unlike anything you can imagine. And now that we're number 1 and now that we've got all these streaks going, everybody's biggest game is Georgia. But it's always been that way for Tech. And we've done better in Atlanta than we have between the hedges. And that is a travesty. So all that said, and I've stated this before, if your boy here could wave a magic wand, we'd play them the first game of the year. We'd open the season with them. And you wouldn't have any trouble with atmosphere, and it would draw some attention to the rivalry. And people say, "Oh well, it's tradition." Well, good Lord, how many other traditions have gone by the wayside? What's wrong with one more? Let's play them the first game of the year, whip their butts, and move on from there.
Yeah, I like that idea. I like the idea of
the huge game. It's the opener. I mean,
Yeah. I think it would give it some more juice, and then, I mean, it would change the dynamic with rivalry week and all that. But I mean, Louisville and Kentucky have done it. Like, I think it's good, because that's another one where I feel like it's gone back and forth about how heated it is. And it's like, well, talk to people who live in Kentucky about it. And I think opening it up would change the dynamic a lot. But to your point too, I think Kirby is super cognizant of history and rivalries.
No doubt.
And because of that, it will not be because of the coaching staff that they.
That's exactly right.
Right?
We're not going to lose because we overlooked him or because we weren't mentally prepared or we weren't in the right headspace going out there. No doubt.
Yeah. All right, boys. Well, we'll talk some more about that game at the end here, but we got a pretty good slate of games this week. There's been some light weeks here the last couple, but I think this is a good one for everybody to get back on the horse. So, 10 games this week, Brooke, all against the spread. We sent you the sheet. I'm feeling good about how you're going to fare, my friend. We would love, right there behind you, after the season's over, to have the 10 pounds of red hung up on that wall.
Yeah, man.
All right, let's open with big one on Thursday evening after we're all fat and happy with turkey and dressing and all the things. The Egg Bowl. Ole Miss heading to Starkville. Cowbell's going to be ringing loud and proud. Ole Miss is a 9.5-point road favorite in this ball game. How do you feel about this one, bro?
I think the Rebels cover, and I think that they avenge that unusual loss last time. And quite frankly, I just think they're a much better team than Mississippi State. State has struggled, as we know, and I feel like the Rebels are going to roll.
Jimmy, what you feeling on this one, brother?
I'm going with Ole Miss too. State's in, I mean, they just fired their coach. They're in disarray. It's only a matter of time before. I mean, the kids just want to go home. They want their season to be over. I know they're fighting for bowl eligibility, but realistically, Ole Miss is fighting for a New Year's Six bowl. So that's a much better opportunity for them. I just don't see it happening. I don't think this is close. I think it's over at halftime.
Yeah, I'm with you, boys. This is a Jimmy's and Joe's things for me. I just think that Ole Miss has the better Jimmy's and Joe's. And I think that, to your point too, James, that dude, they're playing for big things right now. I mean, New Year's Six Bowl, big deal. Go 10-2. They've had a nice year. I mean, there's a lot on the line for them. Plus, man, this is a heated rivalry. I love the Egg Bowl. There's some crazy moments in this game every year. Yeah. I mean, you got dudes that are celebrating like they're peeing on the fire hydrant. I mean, just something crazy always happens in this game. Right. So, I can't wait for it, man. I think this is the beauty of this week of football, is all the wild things that happen. And generally we're all in communal spaces while they're happening to kind of share it with other people, which is always a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm with y'all. I'm with Hottie Toddy on this one. Okay, next one is a Black Friday matchup, 3:30 Eastern. UTSA, the Roadrunners, meet, are going to play Tulane in a monster matchup in the American. Both teams undefeated in the American. American got 3 teams undefeated right now. So UTSA, Tulane, and SMU all undefeated and vying for a shot in their championship game. Tulane is a 3.5-point home favorite in this ball game. Who do you like in this one, Brooke?
I labored over it, boys. I really did, but I'm going to go with Tulane to cover and obviously win at home.
What you think, James? I know this has been one of our sweethearts, the Roadrunners, for the last couple of years. Yeah. Where do you sit on this? Frank Harris getting his magic back or what?
They're just not the same team this year. They're really not. I know they're undefeated in conference, but Tulane's the better football team. Tulane really impressed me when I know it was in a loss to Ole Miss, but they were without their quarterback that game. Jesper Brad, I think his name is. Or no, Brad's his last name. Jesper Brad's a hockey player. Brad's his last name. He's back healthy. I think Tulane's going to win pretty handily in this game. Their offense, UTSA's offense, just does not look the same this year. Their top wide receiver transferred to Ole Miss, ironically, who actually is now transferring again. But their offense hasn't looked the same without that top wide receiver from last year.
Yeah, that's a tough one for me. I got a little recency bias on this because Frank Harris had a vintage Frank Harris performance last weekend. So I feel like they have some good things going. The thing that does make me a little murky about this for the Roadrunners is a lot of smoke about Jeff Traylor maybe being in the A&M mix. I know he's been asked about it directly. I always wonder how that affects the mindset of a football team and all those type things. But I'm with y'all. I'm going to take Tulane too. I think it's a good football team. They're at home, a ton to play for here. They're still vying for a shot at a New Year's Six. The thing too with UTSA is it seems like when they've had games against better opponents, that's when they've had the most trouble. I think they're going to have some more trouble on Friday afternoon. So I'm with y'all. I'm taking the green wave. Monster matchup in Eugene on Friday night. Civil War, Oregon State heading into Outson to play Oregon. Oregon is a 13.5-point favorite. Obviously, a ton riding for them. Oregon State coming off a tough loss to Washington last weekend. How you feel about this one, Brooke?
Boy, what a job Dan Lanning has done, by the way, at Oregon. And it'll be interesting to see if he's still there after this year. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of points, guys. I'm going with the Beavers to cover. I think Oregon will win, but I think Oregon State covers.
What you think, brother?
Man, before last week, I was on the Beavers. After last week, I mean, Washington's defense hasn't been able to stop anything all season. And I know it was in a monsoon, but they couldn't do anything. I mean, they were running the ball at will in the first half. Martinez was just running all over Washington's defense. In the second half, they could not do anything. And it wasn't like Washington really made a whole lot of adjustments. They weren't bringing anybody up in the box or anything like that. They just couldn't move the ball. The offensive line couldn't get any push. And if you can't move the ball against Washington, you're not going to move the ball against Oregon. I think Oregon's got just as good an offense as Washington. It's probably not going to be in a monsoon on Friday. I think Oregon at home is going to win and win by at least 14.
Okay. This is one of the hardest ones of the week for me, and mainly because of the number. I hate this 13.5. I could certainly see Oregon covering this. There is nobody in the United States of America other than Kirby Paul Smart I would rather have leading a football team than Dan Lanning. I mean, I love what he does. I love how he motivates. I love his story. I think that's part of his sell, right, is how much he wanted to be where he is, like to grind and do what he had to do to get to the point as a college football coach. Man, I love Coach Lanning. And so those kids love him that way, right? Because they're with him every day. They see what he gives, all that type of stuff. Dude, Oregon's a good football team. And Washington better look out in that Pac-12 title game because they are coming. I think I'm with Brooke, though. Rivalry game, future of the Civil War is in doubt. So I think there's something to that as well. I just think some wild things could happen on Friday night. I think Oregon wins the football team, but I'm going to take the Beavers to cover that number. I could very well be wrong on that. This is a game I would not put any of my real money towards.
Well, let's not forget also, Oregon has to win to get into the Pac-12 championship game. They're not in yet.
Yeah, I think they are going to win. I will be shocked if Oregon State upends them. I just think they're the better football team. But yes, very valid. Lot to play for if you were the Ducks. All right, next one is, I think for a lot of folks, the biggest game of the weekend. The game, Ohio State heading to Ann Arbor to the Big House to play Michigan. Boy, what a weird and twisted season it has been for the Wolverines. Michigan is a 2.5-point home favorite in this ball game. I think in a lot of ways this is it, right? I mean, this is the real Big Ten championship game. So where are you sitting on this one, Brooke?
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Seth. It's the game. Michigan, to your point, it's with such an odd year and so many weird things. Part of me thinks, man, they just don't know any better than to go out and play a great game and win again against Ohio State. But I just feel like, if for no other reason, the desperation for Ohio State to win this game is big, and I think they're going to. I think they're going to come out victorious. I think both of them are a little overrated, quite honestly. That's a whole other topic with the playoff committee and why the obsession with Penn State. You beat Penn State and they act like you're beating the Eagles, and I don't really know. I mean, yeah, it's like I said, I'm digressing here, but I really looked hard at this one too. I'm sure you guys did also, but I think Ohio State comes out of there with a win. I do.
James, what you thinking, brother?
I'm taking the under. I want the under because let's look at this game, break this game down a little bit, okay? This game, defenses both stout. They both got very good running games. Passing game, Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously one of the generational talent at wide receiver. But statistically, Roman Wilson putting up a very good season for the Wolverines. So I'm not a stat guy, but he's putting up a very good season as well. I'm not saying they're comparable talent-wise, but Marvin Harrison can take over a game. This game is going to come down to the quarterbacks. Who do you trust more, McCarthy or McCord? I don't trust either one of them, but I'm going to go with experience over McCord, and this is the biggest game of McCord's career up to this point. McCarthy's played in this game before, and he's played on the road. This is at the Big House. I'm going with McCarthy. I don't trust him, but that's my reasoning for taking Michigan. I'm not touching this with real money at all. I'm going to sit down with a couple of beers and enjoy it. But I don't trust either one of these quarterbacks. I think it's going to come down to which defense ends up playing better. But for the pick purposes, I'm going to trust McCarthy and take Michigan.
Yeah, it's a tough one, boys. I mean, look, first off, I just want this is going to be great theater, number one. They're going to come straight in off big noon kickoff. They're going to rock and roll. Everybody's going to be raring to go to kick off Rivalry Saturday. I think the forecast is still for snow on Saturday, which I feel like fits this game perfectly, like just from a semantics perspective, which I love. Yeah, boy, James, you kind of stole my thunder there. Generally, what I do in these, Brooke, is if I don't know what I want to do, I pick a quarterback because I just think that's where the tide goes, is with the superior quarterback. And I think that's a valid point too, Jimmy. Like, I think, who is Kyle McCord and who is he going to be in a massive moment, in a massive road environment? And I think there's something to the fact too that, boy, it's just felt like the last few years that, like, Michigan schematically has Ohio State's number. And you could tell that struck a nerve with Ryan Day, Notre Dame week, right? With what Lou Holtz came out and said, that it's a lunch pail game and it's tough and it's blue collar and Ohio State's not built that way. Boy, obviously Ryan Day's reaction to that post game has become infamous, but there's something to that, obviously, right? There's some reality that struck a chord with him. I don't know. I just feel like Michigan with J.J. McCarthy is better equipped to assert their will. But I agree with you, James. I don't think this is going to be some kind of high-scoring affair. I think this is a bloody nose, punch you in the mouth, backyard, grind it out type of game. Yeah, boy, this is, to your point, too, no real money on this, man. I have no idea or no feel for what this is going to look like. But I'll take Michigan. I don't love it. This is more of a home field and J.J. McCarthy thing. That's really it. I don't have any feel for this at all, man.
I'm in the perfect situation, y'all, because I'm pulling for Michigan. I really can't stand Ohio State. I think they're the mother of all overrated programs the last 10 years. I think Ryan Day and just I'll keep my mouth shut. I'm pulling for Michigan. So I'm going to pick Ohio State. I can't lose. If they win, I get a cover and a win. But And there's nothing that says, guys, all those years, stuff you touched on earlier, Tennessee beat us 9 in a row at one time. And you kept on thinking the rival in Florida did 7, and we've done the same to them. And you think, well, man, it just can't go on. Well, it can. Michigan might have their number. They really might.
Yeah.
And boy, if they win this one, they may not look back for a while.
Yeah,
so it'll be fun to watch.
I think there's a lot of pressure on Ryan Day and those boys too, because like a lot of places, if Ohio State was to go 1-11 and the one win was against Michigan, so a lot of people would be just fine with that.
So listen, that seat, it will get warm. It's already warm in some people's minds. They're crazy as that might be, but if he doesn't beat Michigan, it's going to heat up quicker than that heated seat in that F-150. One of you guys is in right now. I can't tell.
That's right.
James, you got the heat on there or what?
No, I'm naturally warm, so I've actually got the air AC on when it's 55 degrees outside.
Look at the beard on my man. He's like a Viking from the
Look, I was going to say, to me, who he's reminding me of, and the name fits, is my man General James Longstreet of the Confederate States of America. He's looking a lot like Longstreet to me right now. So I don't know.
Think we may have to get some artwork to that tune, my friend. I think that's going to stick. I love that.
I love it.
All right, another monster one on the docket, maybe not from an opponent perspective, but just from a history perspective and what it means to the foes involved. But the Iron Bowl at 3:30 on Saturday, Alabama going to Jordan-Hare to play Auburn, where Auburn just lost to New Mexico State, which I still can't really wrap my brain around.
No.
And maybe that's a whole nother conversation. But throw all that out the window, because with this rivalry in that stadium, this game, who the hell knows, right?
Yeah.
And so Alabama was a 14.5-point road favorite, seemed to be hitting their stride, especially with the way Jalen Milroe has played, and gearing up for a showdown with the Dogs on December 2nd. Where do you sit on this one, bro?
I tell you, you read my mind there, Seth. When I heard that New Mexico State score, I didn't believe it. I thought, no, I didn't hear that right, and went and double-checked and triple-checked it. So that was shocking on a lot of levels. And you do throw everything out the window with rivalry week everywhere, but particularly in this one, I'm sure you guys are aware. I was reminded of this week that Nick Saban is 4-4 at Jordan-Hare. Strange things happen there. I'll go back to James, you talking about it. Tennessee's a tough place to play. Auburn is much tougher. The 98-yard drive that we went on was epic. Yeah. I mean, it is a tough place to play. Auburn has absolutely nothing to lose. And there's some mental gymnastics going on there that Coach Saban's great at. I think Auburn covers, I feel like they do. I think Bama's going to win, but I think Auburn covers, and it would not shock me if it's a classic. That said, they just lost to New Mexico State. If they've packed it in, they could get worked because Bama is playing really, really well, and Jalen is I watched a little film on him last night, and he's a handful. So you never know, but I'm taking Auburn to cover, and I think it'll be a typical Iron Bowl.
What you think, James? I know it's your favorite stadium in all college football.
Yeah, the Voodoo Grounds from Pet Cemetery is what it reminds me of. I hate that stadium. I agree with Brooke. Let's go back to 21. I mean, you got Heisman Trophy winner Bryce Young. Auburn is 6-5. They're basically going nowhere. They're talking about firing Harsin at that point in time, and it's just basically a dumpster fire. And they take them to triple overtime, I think, or at least double overtime.
If Tank Bisbee doesn't step out of bounds, they win.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so period.
Yeah. And it's just weird things happen at that stadium. I think Alabama wins. It could be a backdoor cover, but Auburn is going to find a way to make Alabama fans nervous in this stadium, especially after last week when they get beat by New Mexico State. They're going to think that they're going to come in and roll. They're going to make them nervous for at least a little bit. I'm going to take the Tigers. It's one of those things. It's just, I would be nervous if I was an Alabama fan this weekend. I'm nervous for them, and I hope that they lose. But
I have too many times picked against Nick Saban and have regretted it many, many a time. I will not make that mistake this weekend. I'm going to tell you what I love about this too, okay? Please tell me y'all saw the story. I think it was on his call-in show. And he said, well, I had to get on Miss Terry this week. Woke up after the ball game, and she said, man, it's going to be tough for y'all to play at Auburn. And he said, Miss Terry, we play Kentucky this week. We don't play Auburn for 2 more weeks. Like, you got to slow it down here. We got to take care of what we can take care of right now. And so Nick is locked in on the present and the here and now. And I don't know. They have been interesting this year because they were left for dead after Texas and then the follow-up dud when they played South Florida. And for me, I don't know that there is a more electric player. Well, that's hyperbole. Jaden Daniels is here, and then everybody else is kind of down here. But Jalen Milroe is something to watch, boys. I mean, when he is flinging it and running like he can run, and I like watching the kid play. I think he is such a dynamic athlete, and I think what he gives them is incredible. And so, what have I said all year about Auburn, James? Who scares you on their offense?
Nobody.
And that's the rub for me with them. And I know Hugh Freeze will get them right. That's not an if, that's a win. He will do that. But he doesn't have the ingredients right now to make the recipes he wants to make. And I think Alabama is hitting a good groove right now, and I like where they're at. So I'm gonna go with the Tide, and I hope Auburn beats them straight up. It'd be fantastic. But
let me interrupt and ask you all that. I'm just thinking, and I'm not looking ahead because we got one game and that's Tech. And that said, we all know what's next.
Mm-hmm.
As a dog, do you want Alabama losing that game and then coming into the bins?
Nope.
I don't know. I mean, I would love to see Auburn win just straight up, but on the other hand, is Nick Saban going to lose 2 in a row?
Yeah,
where's the mental? I mean, it's Jimmy's and Joe's. You got to line up and play, and it's blocking and tackling and all that. We know that it will be this week. It will be next week. But I don't know if they were to get upset by Auburn. I don't know if I would like that or not.
Man, I think they're a dangerous dog anyways, but I think if they're coming in off a loss, Smartin, without as massive of things to play for, because they're coming to Atlanta if they win on Saturday, playing to play in the dance.
No question.
That goes out the window if they lose to Auburn, even if they were to beat us. And so, yeah, I mean, you talk about playing with house money, and that is a coach and a team I don't know that I want playing with house money. And so, I would prefer them to win in the Iron Bowl and come in with some stuff riding on it because, that's kind of how I sit on it for sure. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right, next one's on the docket for one reason and one reason only. It is my favorite rivalry trophy in all of college football because otherwise this is a who cares game. But boys, Wisconsin, Minnesota for Paul Bunyan's axe. I mean, how can you not watch this game to see somebody hoist up Paul Bunyan's axe? And look, we're not talking about like the axe that you go and grab off the shelf at Lowe's or Home Depot, boys. This thing is like, it is a monstrosity. It is like what you imagine somebody from, one of these Greek epics wielding in battle or something like that. Like, it is awesome. So, yeah, that's why it's on the list. Paul Bunyan's axe, boys. That's what's at stake here. Wisconsin, 2.5-point road favorite. Where are you sitting on it, bro?
I'm going with the Gophers at home, man. They're going to get the axe. They're doing it, 100%.
I love it. All right, Jimmy, you look like you could wield Paul Bunyan's axe with that beautiful beard and that beautiful mane of hair. So where are you sitting on this, baby?
I'm going row the boat and taking the under because these offenses are atrocious.
Yeah, this is such an interesting one for me because historically I am such a PJ Fleck and row the boat guy. I love his energy. I love what he does normally. And James will tell you, Brooke, that I was very keen on the Badgers coming into this. Like, I love the Luke Fickell hire. I love the culture there. I think that is a sleeping giant awaiting some big things to happen. And James cautioned me. He said, brother, they're a year away. Give them a year. Because I thought they were going to come hot out the gate. Got Tanner Mordecai coming in. I was feeling great about it. And James said, they're a year away, homie. And as he normally is, my boy was right. And so it's been a weird year for Wisconsin. So, yeah, I'm with y'all. I'm taking row the boat. I'm going to stay with the Gophers. And home field wins in this. They are going to have Paul Bunyan's axe. It's going to be a nice day to be a Gopher. All right, next one on the docket is the Apple Cup. Washington State headed to Husky Stadium to play Washington. Washington is a 13.5-point home favorite in what could be, who knows? We will see. One of the final Apple Cups, which kind of hurts my heart to say. I love this rivalry too. Where are you sitting on this one, bro?
Just for no other reason, y'all, than just a feeling. I think Washington State's going to cover. I do think Washington will win, as it does most weeks, it seems like, or every week. But I feel like Washington State's going to cover, make a decent game out of it. But I'm going with the Huskies.
Where you
I'm going with the Huskies to win, Washington State to cover.
Yeah. Where you sit on this one, James?
First off, this won't be the last Apple Cup. They just announced a 5-year deal to continue. One neutral site, and then rotating home fields for 4 years. So they announced it on Tuesday, I believe.
I missed that. That's awesome.
So yeah. Oh no, on Monday. So we've got, today is Wednesday. So yeah, on Monday. They announced it 2 days ago. So we've got 5 more years of the Apple Cup. So good on them, because Oklahoma and Oklahoma State and all these other rivalries who are getting, rivalry games who are getting canceled because of the realignment should take note. It can be done.
Yep.
But I'm going to go with, I'm kind of on the fence on this one. I think Washington's going to have a little bit of a letdown on this one because of the big win in Corvallis last week. They've clinched their spot in the Pac-12 championship game. I'm going to go with Washington State to cover. Washington State's playing. I mean, Washington obviously, playing for a lot as well. Shot at the CFP, but Washington State's playing for bowl eligibility. No one at the beginning of the season gave them a snowball's chance of making a bowl game. They were predicted, I think like 10th or 11th in the Pac-12, so they weren't even expected to compete. I think they predicted like 2 or 3 wins, and their chance to win a bowl. I don't think they're going to win, but I think they're going to play well enough to cover. I think Washington's defense is going to kind of go back to what it was. Cam Ward is playing out of his mind this season. I think they're going to score a lot of points, but I think Washington's offense is just too good, and they haven't been stopped all season. The least amount of points they had was 22 in a monsoon. So I think Washington wins, Washington State covers.
I'm with you, boys. I'm on the Cougs. I love them to cover here. This is one of those games where I think wild things generally happen. I think it's a conducive matchup because Cam Ward's the best player on Washington State's team. I think he will have his way in a lot of ways with that Washington defense. I think Washington will win the football game because they are a better football team. But I do like the Cougs to cover in this, especially given the rivalry setting. And to your point, James, that they're fighting for some bowl eligibility too. All right, next one on the docket got way spicier at about 8 p.m. on Saturday night because Jordan Travis will not play in this ball game. Awful injury on Saturday night. First off, hate that. I hate it when any team loses a player. I hate it when the kid is not healthy. I hate it. So I hated seeing that. And by all accounts, he is just as good as it gets from a human being perspective. So, covering him and his family in prayer and hope he gets back as quick as possible. So I hated seeing that. But it obviously makes things a little bit different for them as a football team, especially going to the Swamp on a Saturday night with a ton on the line for them from a season-long perspective. FSU is a 6.5-point road favorite going to play the Gators, who surprised James and me last week. I mean, we had them left for dead, and they came out and gave Mizzou all they wanted last week and put up some points. So where are you sitting on this one, bro?
It's an intriguing matchup for countless reasons. And I will tell you, even before that, and I echo everything you said about the injury, just hate that. But even before that, I've just kind of had a feeling about this one from earlier in the year looking at things. And it may be one of those things, like you said about Saban, Seth, I've done this before and I've regretted it. It's you can't really lose when you pick Florida, because if they lose, then that's great. I never argue with Florida losing, but I just, Florida is they're an enigma on so many levels. But I read something today that and I haven't independently verified this, I assume it's true, but if they lose this game, they will have 3 straight losing seasons for the first time since the 1940s. That boggles the mind when you think about it. And I don't, if you're a Florida person, you kind of think that the recruiting seems to go well. There've been some things that have been encouraging. If you go back over decades, y'all, those people fire coaches at the drop of a hat. So I don't think the seat is far at all from being warm down there. I just have a feeling, even before the injury, I think Florida's going to win the game. And maybe it's because of the playoff piece. Maybe I'm hoping that because it'd be good for Florida State to have a loss for us. I don't know. I just feel like that when it's all said and done, that Florida is going to play its best game of the year and beat Florida State.
What you feeling on this, James?
Have they made an announcement on Mertz? Is Mertz out as well?
I don't
That's a
know.
great question.
I know he's got the collarbone thing. I don't know. I haven't seen on that.
Isn't that interesting too? Not to interrupt you, James, but think of the preparation where all that tape that both of them have that you're looking at all year, you throw it out. I mean, it's like you don't know what you're preparing for. I mean, you do, but you don't.
Yeah. This one's really weird for me. I really felt like, especially after last week, the game against Mizzou, like even with Travis playing, like, I mean, Florida just played really great last week, and Florida hasn't played really terrible.
Right.
They put up a lot of points since the Georgia game. Their offense had been clicking really well, and Florida State just kind of has been chugging along. They've just kind of been just winning. They've just been okay. They haven't been dominating people, even with Travis. So they've been the least impressive undefeated team I've ever seen this late in the season. So I really was leaning towards Florida. I just don't know about Mertz because I don't even know who their backup is, to be truthfully honest.
Yeah.
So it's at the Swamp. I'm going to take Florida to cover. I have no idea who's going to win this, and it pains me to take Florida because that's nauseating and just coming out of my mouth. But I'm going to take Florida to cover. But I would not be surprised if this is a blowout. For Florida State. I would not be really surprised if Florida wins the game straight up because I have no idea what to expect from Tate on the other side, and I have no idea who Florida's quarterback is. So I'm not really sure, but I'm going to go with Florida for the pick.
Here's the thing for me, boys. I think Florida State, in a lot of ways, has been riding that wave of the LSU win. And I think if everybody across the landscape was to have an honest conversation about it, that win looks a whole lot different week 13 than it did even in week 5. I mean, LSU is not – they're not what anybody, I don't think, anticipated they were going to be, right? And their defense has been atrocious. And so I know that that's their hang-the-hat win is the LSU win, but where do we put that now in the echelon of big wins across college football this year? And so I think that's one thing. And then to y'all's point, the games they've played after that, it's not like they've run through the ACC roughshod. And I don't think anybody would make the argument that the ACC is some type of behemoth. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I just don't know how I feel about Florida State. And, my brother is a massive Florida State fan, so he's probably going to scold me for this. But I feel like they are ripe to get picked off, especially given the injury and what has gone on. I think they are the more talented roster, but at the Swamp, under the lights, I don't know, man. I just think some funky things could happen. So, I'm going to take the Gators to cover. I still think Florida State wins the football game, goes to play Louisville in the AC title game, and still has a shot at the CFP. But I think it is a close ball game. So I'll take the Gators to cover, which I may need to wash my mouth out after this episode's over with. Feels a little filmy after saying that.
We're all on accord on that.
The next one is in my backyard. Clemson at South Carolina. Everybody and their mama, all my neighbors talking about this. This is one of them boys, I'm going to be straight up with you. I could care less. But it's massive in the Palmetto State. People talk about it all year long. So Clemson is traveling to Williams-Brice. Sandstorm going to be blaring. Clemson a 6.5-point road favorite against Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks. How do you feel about this one, bro?
I think it's right there for Carolina, Seth. The environment will be there. They're capable of beating Clemson. They really are. And it would be a huge – one of those things that's probably a bigger win for South Carolina than it is for Clemson in that sort of game. That said, I think Clemson right now seems to be, and Dabo Swinney in particular, they remind me of that golfer that's got 4 holes left and they birdie the last 4 holes and they really wish the tournament – could keep going right then, but it's got to end and wait till the next day. They're finding it at the right time. I think Clemson covered. I'm pulling for South Carolina. I hope the Gamecocks win. I'd love it for them, but I think Clemson gets it done.
What you thinking, James?
Brooke made a perfect analogy with that. Clemson, especially after last week, we both picked UNC. We couldn't believe the spread. We were shocked with that, man. That's why Vegas has the big buildings. And they're getting better as the season goes on. Like ever since whatever his name is from Spartanburg, ever since that plant on Dabo's show, they've just played better. And I don't know what it is. I mean, the cult is strong, but I think Clemson goes in, even though I think it's going to be close and early. I really do, because Williams-Brice is going to be rocking, especially if, Rattler can do some good things and score some points early. But I really think, Clemson's just a better football team. They really are. They were last year. I know that they, SC ended up winning in Clemson, but they're just a better football team. They should win this, and they should win it pretty handedly. So I'm going to go with Clemson.
You're all on the time.